not only are we headed north to Sudbury for this episode of the OHL podcast, but we're also getting a recommendation from a former guest on the podcast. I don't know if that reflects well on me. Does it make me an easy touch, or is this guy just that much worth a recommendation? Adam Bennett, former Sudbury Wolf, joins us on the podcast. Hey, it's great to have you. Thanks for making the time.
Thank you, Mike. It's my pleasure to be here with you. And who gave the recommendation? Is that a Paquette thing?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Packer himself, Andy Paquette. So Andy and his brother Daryl were on together. And if I'm honest with you, it might have been one of the funniest podcasts we've ever had. They got going pretty good. And the funny thing about that, so you and Andy would have played together, and then he became he was your assistant coach in your final year, if I'm not mistaken.
Like a Reggie Dunlop kind of thing.
Kind of like a Reggie Dunlop.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, I don't think it helped our team. How about that? We didn't get past many rounds, but no, I don't know. I remember Sudbury fondly, all the great times that we had. It's such a great place to play, and just lucky to have had the opportunity to do it.
Okay, I want to dive into that a little bit further because I'm quite fond of the market too. But before we get there, and I feel kind of bad because it's almost like starting with a quiz, but I just want to throw a name at you.
Okay.
Drake Barahowski. What does that name mean to you?
Well, he was the first overall pick.
The only one that went ahead of you.
The only guy that went ahead of me. So he was the first defenseman, took that slot from me. He was a heck of a defenseman, but what's funny is I ended up in Florida in 2018, and I'm in the Tampa area. Right down the road in Orlando, there's Drake Barahowski coaching the Orlando Solo Bears. So I was able to kind of follow a little bit of what he's got going on there. So, we lost in hockey. You can lose track of guys for decades, literally like 20, 30 years. And then all of a sudden you end up in a place, and I'll give you an example with another name that people might know. Steve Marcolini played for the Kitchener Rangers, London Knights. He's a Georgetown guy. I'm a Georgetown guy. He was my idol from Georgetown. I modeled myself after Steve Marcolini. Long story, he goes off, does his thing. I go off, do my thing. 30 years later, I'm in Florida now, 2018. I get a message that says, "Hey, Steve Marcolini's in Florida." I said, "Whereabouts?" Apollo Beach, 10 minutes from my home. So we reconnect, and it's like old times. That's the great thing about hockey. You could be away, like I said, 20, 30 years, but when you get together, it's just like you picked up right where you left off. So yeah, he was down there. I got Drake Barahowski down there. Like all these names start to come back, and it's great to reconnect with some of these guys.
It's amazing. Drake goes first overall in '88 to the Kingston Raiders at the time. You second to Sudbury. And then just to complete that circle, Drake Barahowski comes back about 20 or so years later and coaches in Sudbury, of all things.
Right. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it's just the hockey world is it's small, first of all. Like, so everybody knows somebody in that field. So it is a community, it's a family, and you never lose that connection, right? So even though you might not be there talking to each other, but when you do see each other, like Packer, right? I'd lost track of Packer after Sudbury, but I happened to be in the Toronto area. On the radio, Andy Paquette's talking about his business, and I think it was testing. There was sport testing at the time. And so I get online, I find out where he is. He's in Windsor. So I reconnect with him there. And so we've been able to keep tabs on each other over the years. And now we connect again on a business matter. So it's great. I love being part of that family.
That's amazing. So let's talk about the city of Sudbury. As a Georgetown kid, smaller town, but next to the GTA, essentially. You're not far from Greater Toronto for sure. And then to Sudbury. Must have been a bit of a culture shock. What was it like for you initially?
Yeah, it was an interesting interview when Sam McMaster was talking about Sudbury. I didn't know anything about Sudbury, and I gotta confess here, I didn't even know much about the Ontario Hockey League. That's how small Georgetown was. I was a AA player, never played AAA. Never ventured off into the GTHL or do what other guys were doing. I'd never seen an OHL game. So when Sam McMaster had come in and was talking to me about, Sudbury and being a draft pick, I thought, okay, that's pretty cool. I don't know anything about Sudbury. How big do I think the city is? I don't know, what, 17,000 people? No, it's slightly more than that. So there's a real education curve about the size of the city, the impact that hockey has on it, the fans up there, the lifestyle. So it wasn't until I, took that first trip up north that I ever saw the city. And it was, culture shock to a point. But I think it helped that I didn't really know. I just kind of immersed myself in it and just rolled with the punches. Having time to reflect on it, I'm glad that I had those experiences. It would have been very different in an Oshawa or some other location closer to the GTA. It would have been a different experience. I was cut off from my hometown. You're 3.5, 4 hours away. You don't have that quick access to go home when you kind of feel like it, or like university students go home, do their laundry or something. I didn't have that ability. I was a distance away. That I only got to see family on the road trips, and so it kind of made it a little different experience. But what I'm thankful for, anyways.
Having never seen an OHL game prior to being drafted to Sudbury, what was your first game in the Ontario Hockey League like? Do you remember it?
It actually went very well. I remember making some plays, probably playing above my head because I wasn't nervous. I just what scared me most was training camp, and then guys are throwing the mitts, and there's nobody in the stands, and you could just hear the impact of punches, and thinking, well, that's not really my game. I better just kind of stick to my side over here. I wasn't nervous. I was actually excited because we got, a lot of fans in the stands cheering. We had, I think we had low expectations because we hadn't made the playoffs for a couple of years. What was exciting was I remember the first game, we came out in warmups with the old green and yellow jerseys. That was the warm-up. And then the unveiling of the new colors came in. So warm-ups over, we go back out for the beginning of the game, and now we're wearing what is now the classic blue and Dallas Cowboy colors, and that. So that there was a lot of excitement about the team because of change. Sam McMaster had brought in change, new coaching, new colors, ownership was on board, and it was exciting time to be there for all of that. I was just, one piece of a larger puzzle of things that were happening at that time.
New coaching. And speaking of full circle moments, we touched on Barahowski. Ken McKenzie was your coach there, and his son Derek is now the coach of the team, but came back for a little bit of time as Derek transitioned home from Florida, was in behind the bench for the team again. What was Ken like to play for?
He was awesome. He was the perfect coach for me. He was just a big supporter. I was allowed to make the mistakes. I was allowed to take the chances to do things. I know there's a lot of coaches that, if you make a mistake, you're going to pay for it, right? I never got that feeling. That really freed me up to do some things. So if there's any coaches out there listening, let the kids make mistakes. That's how they learn. Okay. Just, because confidence is such a fragile thing. And then what happened to me after Sudbury, if we want to transition there just real quickly, I got into a different coaching environment with Mike Keenan. And so I had a Ken McKenzie, a full supporter, to go out and do what I wanted to do. Failed sometimes, but that was okay. I was going to learn. I was going to get better. Go into a Chicago organization with Mike Keenan, and now it was okay. One mistake. Well, you're sitting, you're watching, you're up in the stands, and then the confidence level kind of dropped a little bit. So that was tough on me. So I think at the time for Sudbury, K-Mac was the perfect coach for me, and probably still would be a great coach for a lot of guys that are, just trying to learn the game. And he was great at keeping your confidence and making it fun. He came to the rink every day. It was a great time. So we loved him. I still love him. I still, see him at the rinks every once in a while. And it's again, we just kind of pick up like it's old times.
What was it like having Sean O'Donnell as a defense partner?
He was the perfect partner too. Uh, he said to me, he says, you go, you take the puck, you take the spotlight, you do what you want to do. I'm going to stay back here and I'm going to hold the fort. And he did that for 18 years in the NHL. I mean, he was the perfect yin to my yang. I had the freedom to roam and do what I wanted to do. And I knew I had a stud defense partner that would take care of the house and would always back me up. And he was again, we were a good combination. I had the spotlight, I guess, because I was the high draft pick and a high NHL draft pick. And yet I couldn't have done that without a Sean O'Donnell next to me, just saying, you go, you take it, I'm good. I'm back here when you need me, kind of thing. And we played off of that. So that was a lot of fun.
One of my favorite things about Sudbury today is the arena. I've got nothing against the new ones and all of the amenities and the creature comforts, but in Sudbury, the arena is still a classic hockey arena. What do you remember of playing inside that barn?
Wow, come on. It was the place to be in Sudbury when we were up. That was the place to be, and the atmosphere hasn't changed from what I heard. I mean, you got the wolf that comes out every time. I mean, I played in the old NHL buildings too, so I love the character of the old buildings. It kind of misses that in the newer ones, but there was no better place to be, and we kept saying it when we were in the dressing room, like, where else would you rather be than right here playing tonight, with these fans and this atmosphere and everything that was going on. And it's still a classic. I love watching Shoresy and seeing it come alive again, the bowels of the Sudbury Arena back in Shoresy. And I remember walking those halls, and I wish, I haven't been back in so many years. I really do need to get it on my to-do list to go back there and relive some of those moments again.
Do that, because there's talk of a new arena. I don't know how many years this one's got left, Adam, so we have to make sure we get there.
Yeah, I know, I've heard, and it's sad. It will have to happen. I know, that change is inevitable, but yeah, I do have to get up there and go catch a game sometime. Maybe Packer and I'll hop get a car ride together and go up there. I know some guys have done it, and I'm I hope maybe there's alumni out there that'll call me up and get me out to something up there. I'd love to do it. Although I don't play the hockey anymore, but it may be a golf tournament or something. I'd love to get up there and catch some hockey.
Maybe you can go for a Guelph Sudbury game and you can watch Packers kid Charlie play.
That's right. Yeah, maybe I can catch the bus. They're not too far from me.
There you go.
They'll put me underneath the bus, right? And they just, just with the bags underneath, just ride. I don't care. That's fine. I'm good that way, like Masher used to do. Or the stories anyways. I don't know if they're true.
You mentioned that stuffed wolf up in Sudbury that comes out on the wire every time the Wolves score a goal. If they take anything from the old arena to the new one, I hope it's that or something like it. But I heard on occasion, Adam, that a player who was late, or a player who was a first-year player, let's just say, sometimes ended up with his equipment attached to the wolf somehow, or anything like that.
Really?
Any wolf-related shenanigans when you were there?
No, not that I'm aware of, unless I was, again, just kind of naive doing my own thing. But I don't remember that sort of stuff happening. But I just know, like, I remember the first time it coming out, and because I was not aware that this wolf comes out and, so a goal gets scored and this thing's happening and the fans are going nuts. And I'm like, where the hell am I right now? This is just crazy, just nuts. Fortunately, I was able to ring that thing up a few times and have it come out to center ice and experience it for myself. But I'd love to get back and see it again.
You kind of alluded to this, talking about training camp and without fans in the building, hearing the sounds of fists meeting cheekbones and jaws and whatnot. Obviously, that was an era that you were a part of, though that wasn't part of your game. How intimidating was it, though, as a player, when that sort of thing was happening around you?
As a first year guy, it was an eye opener. I mean, I played junior B in Georgetown before I got up to Sudbury, and so I mean, there was fights in junior B, but there's guys that had that role, right? So I didn't have to kind of worry about it. I was only 15, 16, so I didn't have to kind of, worry about it, but that was a scary time to see these big guys just, throw haymakers at each other, and God love them for doing it. It wasn't my thing, although every once in a while, you kind of have to, drop the gloves and either protect yourself or protect a teammate, or it was just, to change momentum of the game. My thing, I hated to get hit. So it was a pretty quick fight. If I got one in the face, okay, well, then I'll just hang on for a little while and let it go. That wasn't my game, nor did I ever, hope it would be, but it was just, for a young guy getting into that environment, and not only, just the fisticuffs and that these men. I mean, you are a young guy playing with 2, 3, sometimes 4-year-old players, right? So these guys have experienced things that you just didn't as a Georgetown, kid coming out of small town, going into the big city, and then having these other experiences up there. The hockey training camp was intense, so that's but what was great, again, you had Sam and K-Mac just come in and say, look, don't worry about that stuff. You just go and do your thing. Just go have fun, right? Just show us what you want to do. And that's why I was able to get through training camp. And then I do remember my very first game, doing some things creatively that, I just didn't have fear, because these guys just supported me 100%.
You played in the Ontario Hockey League at a time when a kid, although I feel weird calling him a kid because he was always a man child, I think, a man in a boy's body or a younger man's body. But Eric Lindros came into the Ontario Hockey League. You would have obviously had to play against him. That must have been a fun defensive assignment.
he was he was so good. He was so good. I told my friends, I said, if you could plant a seed and grow a hockey player, it would be Eric Lindros. And he could do anything. He could set up the plays, he could finish the plays, he could, grind it out on the boards, open ice hits, whatever style of game, he could basically do anything that he wanted. He was a man among child, even at 16, 17. And so there's a couple of stories. People might hear this and they might remember me on Off the Record. We had a debate about Eric Lindros. He had come up for a Hall of Fame, and I was brought onto the show to basically counter anything that Bobby Clarke said. So Bobby Clarke's on the set, I'm on the set, there's a couple others, but Michael Landsberg, right before we go out, says, whatever Bobby says, you say the opposite. So I didn't know which side of the argument I was going to be on. I'm obviously a fan of Eric Lindros. I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, but whatever Bobby says, you're going to say the opposite. So cameras are rolling, cue Michael Landsberg, and, Bobby, does Eric Lindros deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? And Bobby, being a man of very few words, basically said yes. And now I have to come up with a counter argument to Bobby Clarke. And I'm like, well, and I kind of made up something on the spot. So I don't want people to go back on that and say, oh, I don't think he deserves to be in there. Absolutely, he does. He changed the game. He was a stud from the moment he stepped on the ice. And he did things that we haven't seen. We haven't seen a player like Eric Lindros, since he played. He and I, there was a playoff game. We're Oshawa, Sudbury, and I don't know how this happened, because this wouldn't be me, but Eric and I got together in a little tilt. Okay, so I'm just holding on for dear life, hoping not to take one. And when Eric decided the fight was over, he just grabbed my pant leg and just flipped me over. I was 6'4", 210 pounds. He's 6'5", whatever, 225. When he said the fight was over, he just flipped me over and, okay, we're done. And I'm like, yep, okay, that's good by me. I mean, the sheer strength of this guy was insane. And so I, played in that era. I know how good he was, and he completely changed how people could perceive hockey players. I know he was not one-dimensional. He could basically do anything, score, set them up, play the tough game, whatever you needed. He was that guy. He was the leader, and he was absolutely fantastic. I don't think people know how good he really was.
I don't think we ever got the chance to really know that either, did we? Considering the injuries, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They unfortunately that it was a part of the game, and it slowed him down. But when I saw him in junior and had to play against him, it was you always had to know where he was on the ice. And I'll tell you, we had an all-star game in, I think it was Cornwall, and Eric Lindros was on the bench. It was Cornwall or Montreal, not sure which one, but he would basically come to the bench and say, okay, this shift, I'm going to run around and hit everything. And so, to his line mates, here's what I'm going to do. And he would go out and he would just set people on their butts. A couple of shifts later, okay, I'm going to go, you guys go to the net. I'm going to set you up. And then for the next couple of shifts, that was kind of his focus. And, sure enough, he'd get the assist. And he's like, okay, now I'm going to go get one. And so for the next couple of shifts, all he's thinking about is scoring the goal. But that's, he was so good that he could basically dictate, like, Babe Ruth, right? He's going to swing one out. Okay, I'm going to go score one. And then he would just go out and make it happen. But he was dominant. It was impressive.
I started this conversation by throwing a name at you. I want to throw a handful more your way and see if you can. So what do these next players have in common? Matt Sundin, Dave Chizowski, Scott Thornton, Stu Barnes, and Bill Guerin. What do those five players have in common?
They were the 5 picks ahead of me.
In total, Adam, 6 players, 1 in the O and 5 in the show went ahead of you.
Right? Yeah.
Crazy. And
then there's Adam Bennett. You remember those other names? Who's Matt Sundin? Who's that? What did he ever do in the show? Right? Yeah. No, those are the 5 names. They're all forwards. So I was the first defenseman picked in the NHL draft that year. So Drake's got me on the OHL one, but I got the NHL one. Yeah.
There you go. That was the 89 draft. You go to Chicago. What do you remember of draft day?
Oh man, that was exciting. I thought I was going to go to Minnesota. I had a great interview with them. I kind of felt that it would be a good spot for me to go. But I was in the stands, and so the draft's going. So Minnesota picked 7th. Okay, so the first few picks roll by, no real surprises. And then it gets to, it's the 6th pick, and I'm just sitting there and I'm kind of thinking, I don't know who Chicago's going to take, but my eyes are kind of on Minnesota. But now the cameras start to, all the cameramen start to run into my area, and they're all like focusing the lens on me. And I'm like, okay, well, this might be, maybe it's me this time. And then sure enough, we select Adam Bennett. And then I remember I had a signal. I had arranged for my friends who couldn't make the trip that I would give them a signal. So I would walk up on the stage, throw the jersey on, and then just one hand through the hair would be a signal to all my friends back home that I did it. So there you go. So if ever they watch the draft over, you'll see that one hand go through, and that's my sign to my brother and all his friends that were watching back home. That I was thinking of them in that moment as well. But it was an exciting time. And then you bring you down to the floor, you get to meet everybody, and then it started. I was a Chicago Blackhawk. Wasn't disappointed, but I was a little bit surprised because I of course interviewed with Chicago, interviewed with Minnesota, and all the other teams too. And I just really felt that Minnesota was my best fit, best interview. The feedback, that sort of thing. I didn't get that from Chicago. Maybe they just held their cards closer to their vest or something, but then ended up going there. So, let's say a pleasant surprise to go 1 pick earlier.
We talked earlier about arenas, and you mentioned you like the classic NHL arenas. That still would have been the Chicago Stadium for you? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Back in the old barn. Yeah. Because it was small, right? It was like a smaller ice surface, kind of like, the Buffalo Odd, the Boston Garden. They had smaller ice surfaces. And what was what was funny was, when you turned pro, the minor league team for Chicago was the Indianapolis Ice. They played on Olympic size sheet. So you could be in the minors, you would have all of this ice of which to play and do your thing. And, you had lots of time to, to get to spaces or carry the puck. Then you get called up and now you're on this little tiny, we call it closet, right? Everything happening so fast, so quick. And it's just because there's no ice, there's no space out there. So the transition from, Indianapolis farm team up to Chicago was never easy. Like you just never got comfortable in one place or the other because the ice surfaces were so different. And so that made the transition a little bit hard at that time. But there was no better place to play than Chicago Stadium. And if you recall, like this was back in the Iraq War days, Eddie the Eagle was, being chanted everywhere. And when the national anthem started up and everybody just got up and then they just went nuts, it sent chills down your spine. It was so loud in there. And then organ going in that was, built right into the walls. Unfortunately, you talk about the Wolf coming over into the new arena in Sudbury. I think they wanted to get that organ into the new building, but it was literally built into the walls of Chicago Stadium. They couldn't transport it. But just being in that environment at that time was just crazy. It was just like chills every time that national anthem took off.
You talked about Belfour, Goulet, Chelios, Roenick. I mean, my goodness. And we already alluded to a guy by the name of Iron Mike behind the bench.
Right. Yeah. There's something else, wasn't it?
It sure was. I get nervous just reading the names off, Adam. I don't know how
let's just
would have been walking
defenseman.
in. Okay.
We'll leave the forwards out because I was a defenseman. Okay. Chris Chelios, Steve Smith. They're going to play. They played 30 minutes a night. Okay. You had Keith Brown, Doug Wilson, Dave Manson. Craig Muni was there. Igor Kravchuk. They were stocked on defensemen. Right. So trying to get some ice time would be a difficult thing. Because you got two studs that played half the game. And then you had all these other guys, like Cam Russell was in, like they had all kinds of defensemen. What was great for me is I get to watch those guys. So even though I wasn't, particularly, playing a lot in the game, probably watch more games with the organist than I did actually play physically. But I got to watch Chris Chelios every night, a right-handed defenseman like me, make the game look so easy. He was always in position, never got tired. It was just impressive to see him control the pace of play and being a fan of hockey, of course, I really cherished the opportunity to watch those guys. And it was a guy like Steve Smith who had been around a lot, who could see me struggling sometimes, just put his arm around you and say, look it, just go and have fun. It's just hockey, right? Don't worry about, high draft pick, high expectations, lots of pressure, in and out of the lineup, a coach that, his communication style was a little difficult to manage at times. He would just come up and say, look at, you're going to last longer than the coach. Don't worry about it. Just go. And then try and take some of that pressure off. It wasn't easy, but, I had a good group around me that could do it. It was interesting. I mean, they're all family guys. They're all older. We went to the Cup Finals in '92, right? So they were a stacked team. We all come in for practice, and then they all go home. Like we never really kind of hung out, in a leisurely way. At least in Chicago, when we're on the road, was a little bit different. But these guys were family guys, so they would just come in, get the practice. Mike Keenan ran about a 45-minute skate. That was it. So it was a very short day, and everybody's back doing their thing. And I'm stuck at the Bismarck Hotel by myself, this downtown Chicago. Okay, well now what do I do? I kind of bored for a little while. But what changed when I went out to Edmonton was now it was a lot of younger guys, and yeah, we all kind of hung out and hung around. We didn't just all go home. We didn't all have families or anything. So we spent a lot more time at the arena, just kind of hanging out and doing our, having some fun.
I wondered, considering the depth on Chicago, the approach of Coach Iron Mike Keenan, if Edmonton wouldn't have felt like a bit of a breath of fresh air to you.
It was awesome. Yeah. Well, because now I'm with, the younger guys, right? And then it was a lot of former first rounders from other teams that were still on their first contract. So it was talent at a reduced cost. They hadn't hit their second contracts yet, so they weren't expensive. And going from Chicago to Edmonton, not only geographically was it a shock to the system, going from the big city of USA up to Edmonton, but the environment was a lot more relaxed because it was the younger guys. Expectations had dropped. Now I could kind of get into the flow. Now I was with my guys, the OHL guys that I had played with and against. Now we're all kind of huddled, all going through the same thing, right? We were all first round picks of other teams: Stephen Rice, Scott Thornton, Scott Pearson. Like we were all kind of together there to grow and develop. And that's where things kind of started, to really happen for me. And now I was getting into the line up on a regular basis. I was getting some ice time. The coaches were kind of like, hey, just, it's okay, go do your thing. Kind of, reminded me of Sudbury in some ways, that, just go and relax, go and have fun, just play the game kind of thing. And so things started to really turn around for me there. Unfortunately, it didn't last, but that's the story we'll get to, I'm sure, at some point.
You scored your 3 NHL goals with the
Oilers.
Do you remember?
That's right.
Do you remember them all?
I remember. I know I scored two of them against Andy Moog, so I owned him. I owned Andy Moog. Two of my 3. My first one was against Curtis Joseph. I remember it vividly because I actually scored the game or two before, but it was disallowed, and so I was like real excited to get the first goal out of the way. And then I turn and the referee's waving it off, and I'm like, oh, what do I need to do? But then a couple of games later, I scored. I scored on Curtis Joseph. I was just rushing up the ice and stepped over the blue line and just shot it and went in. And I immediately made a beeline for the net and grabbed the puck, to get my celebration started. I'm taking this puck, and it's the first goal. So, and my dad had the puck, put on a plaque for me and things like that. I remember the goals. None of them were really exciting or anything like that. There's only 3. How can I not remember all of them?
If Steve Smith was that big brother type influence for you in Chicago, what did it mean to be with Doug Weight in Edmonton? You roomed with him, didn't you?
Briefly, yeah. He was my first roomie. We went to a training camp in Whistler, and he was going through contract negotiations at the time. So what I learned from Dougie Weight was he was just extremely professional, even at a younger age. Professional about how he treated his body, the rest that he got, the hydration, nutrition. He was fit beyond, most of the other guys. He had put in so much work in the off season that, for me, it was an eye opener. Like I hadn't really seen that. Chicago, we tested for fitness, but the guys didn't come in completely fit. Like JR did not show up in shape. He used training camp to get in shape, as did some of the other guys. Go to Edmonton, Dougie Weight shows up and he's ripped. Like he's put in all the hours in the off season. And so spending time with him really showed me a real professional side that I hadn't seen before. So it was just an eye opener to say, okay, there's more I got to do. There's more work I need to put in. Whatever I thought I did was not enough. And so he was an example of professionalism at a younger age that I didn't see from anybody else.
Was the time zone a barrier to success in any way? I mean, it's hard to say that when you talk about an Oilers dynasty, but I'm just thinking of being in the mountain time zone and what the challenges that must have posed, travel, etc.
The biggest challenge was travel with not the time zone, but we flew commercial. So we every flight, it just seemed like we had a connector out of Minneapolis. So we spent hours at the airport. We had to do a lot of things to entertain ourselves, which was kind of funny, but we would have a road trip. Okay, Edmonton to Minneapolis, have a layover, get on another flight over to wherever, let's say Chicago. Whereas Chicago, we had our own plane, we chartered. So you just drive right onto the tarmac, walk right up onto the plane, and off you go. And then you'd be back in your own bed that same night. Edmonton, oh man, travel was the problem. That was the that was the hindrance. Not so much time zones, but it was commercial flying. And you're in the, you know, as a young rookie, you're in the middle seat, right, with all these other people around you. Hard to get rest. Hard to be rested during that. That was the real challenge.
What were some of the things you did to entertain yourselves during all that time in an airport?
Well, okay. There was always wagering on what bag was going to come out first. So when you're at the carousel, everybody has to throw the $5 in, and then whoever's the first bag comes out, okay, they win the pot. If we're on a layover, it would be, you would tie some money to dental floss, you'd leave it in the hallway and you go fishing. So the passengers that were walking by, unbeknownst to them, they reach over to grab the dollar or whatever we had tied up, and then of course yank it away before. And that was funny to us, not particularly funny to the people that were singled out, because eventually we had a crowd around us, because people would pick up on what's going on and they would want to see what's happening. And so people would be walking down the hall, and there's money, and they'd reach down, we'd yank it. You'd put the shaving cream in the people's shoes when they take them off, just get a little break. Silly things. What else are you going to do in an airport? There's really not much. So we just silly things to entertain, mostly little wagers, right? Like what's going to come out next, or what flight's going to be delayed, just dollars going around, a lot of cards being played, anything to keep your mind off the doldrums of travel.
When you suffered the injury, did you know that it was the end for you?
No, that was and thankfully not, because that would have been crushing. So I knew I hit it bad. So what happened was, I was in a game, things were going, for me at least, things were really starting to pick up in Edmonton. Like I said, I was a regular player in the roster, getting ice time, power play, penalty killing, really starting to kind of find my game again. And then we're playing the New York Rangers, and I was going back to pick up the puck. It was around the neutral zone area. I just made a tight turn to kind of bring it back up. Nick Kiprios had come in and put a hit on me. It's a hit you see 10, 15 times a game. It's really, there wasn't anything particularly dirty about the check. It was just the way that my leg was under me when I fell over. So what happened was, instead of my knee bending at the joint where it was supposed to, it went over sideways, and I tore the ACL, MCL, PCL, and the cartilage all in one shot. Now, there was instant pain when it happened, but then all of a sudden there was nothing. And I didn't, so I didn't know. I knew I'd injured something, but I didn't know exactly what it was, because I didn't have any pain anymore. The trainer had come on the ice, and he says, "Where are you hurt?" And I said, "Well, I think it's under the kneecap, but that's where it hurt originally." But I said, "I don't really feel much." He knew right away. He said, "Don't put any pressure on this leg. Let's get you off. We'll get you to the doctor here, and we'll get you examined." But he knew that I had completely torn the ligaments. Like, it wasn't just a tear where those fibers are still sending some signals. It was, I tore everything. And as the doctor described it, all of my ligaments looked like broccoli. They had just kind of exploded. And so, yeah, it was the ACL. It was the ACL, PCL. So the two that cross over under the kneecap, and the MCL. I only had one ligament attached, was the lateral collateral. So when I got undressed, had to shower up, my leg was kind of just swinging freely. I couldn't control my couldn't control the lower half of my leg. So I had to time my steps with when my foot was under me, because it was just kind of swinging freely. And so I knew I'd done it bad. But what they said was, they said, okay, yeah, we're gonna have you in surgery tomorrow. They didn't really tell me the extent of it, but we're gonna have you in surgery tomorrow. You'll be ready to go by training camp. So the injury happened in March. It was March 23rd. They said you'll be ready to go by training camp, which would be September. And so that was the expectation, was, okay, this is just a simple surgery. I'll do some rehab. I'll get ready to go, and I'll be back in training camp. Well, after a summer of extensive physio, the knee wasn't getting there, because I'd returned to Georgetown and I was working with the physiotherapist there, and she was like, well, this isn't a 6-month injury. This is like a 12-month injury. And I said, no. I got to be ready by training camp. She said, well, we'll try. So I show up in Edmonton in September, and they look at me and go, well, they go, this is more of a 9-month injury. I'm like, okay, so I got, a couple more months to get it ready then. Oh yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be ready to go by Christmas. So I keep working out. I keep, trying to get this leg better, but the swelling was just like huge. It just wouldn't calm down. And make a long story short, I tried everything I do. I had multiple surgeries after the fact. My knee was just rejecting all of the surgery attempts that they did. And it finally came to 2 years later, 2 years of trying to play on this broken knee, shooting it up with anything they could get, draining it of all the fluids, going through the ordeals. Eventually I saw a doctor who looked at me, looked at my charts, and said, no, man, you can't play on this knee. We got to take it all out and you're done. But that was 2 years after the injury. And at that point, I kind of figured, okay, well, this is probably it. So it wasn't an instant, you're done. It was, hey, it's going to be 6 months. Okay, I'll be back by training camp. No, it's not 6, it's 9. You'll be ready by Christmas. Okay, well, then I'll get ready by then. No, it's not really a 9-month injury. It's more of a year injury. Like just the ACL alone is a year injury. They're like, nah, you'll be back. Well, it turned out it was a 2-year ordeal, and probably 5 surgeries in total, multiple stints of giving it everything that I could, but I just couldn't play anymore. So they had to go in and take it all out. And at that point, the doctor said, well, the best I can do is just, get you around the golf course. And I said, well, I think I'm okay with that. I just wanted to walk again comfortably. The swelling in my knee was just too much to handle after 2 years of carrying it around, and the pain that goes in with it. So if we can just get past that, then give me quality of life at this point. And so that's how it ended.
You're such a young man at that point, though. And arguably, you're not even in your prime yet. And I wonder how much of that experience you lean on in your work to this day around the mental aspects of the game and mental strength.
Right. Fortunately, and I was lucky to do this. When I was in Chicago, because I was struggling with my confidence, I had gone to the sports psychologist in Chicago, didn't really get the help I wanted, because psychology was more about a deeper dive, then let's get inside of you. How does this make you feel? What was your upbringing? And I'm like, no, I just need some tools. I need some way to control my mindset. So luckily, I got into Tony Robbins. People might scoff at the name, but back then it was kind of something new, at least for me. I'm watching late night TV because I'm at the Bismarck Hotel by myself. I'm watching TV, and here comes a Tony Robbins. He's like, well, we can change your mindset. We can empower you. We can get, build confidence and all of these things. And I'm like, sign me up. I ordered the tapes and the CDs or whatever, and I started to really get into it. And that's where I kind of felt, okay, now I'm starting to take my mindset, control of my mindset. My confidence started to build. Chicago come back in the next year and said, we want to send you down to the minors. And I said, no. I said, I'm an NHL player. I said, I would really appreciate if we could, get a trade somewhere. Because I had built up my confidence that I'm an NHL player and that it's going to happen now. I'm going to make it happen. So they wanted to send me down. I asked them politely for a trade, and thankfully they made it happen. I go to Edmonton. I was in the minors for 2 weeks in Edmonton, and then I was a full-time NHL player. But I had already seen myself in there, so I was already fully into the mindset of what it takes to build up the confidence and resilience and see around roadblocks and obstacles. So to carry myself in a manner. When the injury happened, it wasn't a devastating blow because I just said, okay, well, what's next? What's next for me? What can I do now? Like, it wasn't, I've hit a roadblock and now I'm stopped. It was, okay, I just need to kind of work my way around this. What I thought was going to be my career for 10 plus years isn't. Accept it, and then let's figure out what's next for me. So luckily I got that education, but it was self-taught in the beginning. Like I really went into it full bore, got all the books and the tapes, and started reading biographies and really soaked it all in, so that I had tools that I could instantly change the way that I saw things and then just keep going. That happened. I got injured. I think it was I was 20, a week before my 23rd birthday. I didn't retire until I was 26. So yeah, still young. So I got, I had time in there to really get this mindset thing going and prepare myself for what was next. And I've carried that through me, everything that I've done ever since. I've been involved in the game, since I was a kid. I've never really left it. I've always used mindset as part of the coaching. Now I do it full time, right? That I've brought it to the forefront because I really think the kids are, at a younger age are struggling with confidence, and I'm happy to share with them what I've learned.
I want to go a little deeper into that, and we will for sure. But okay. One of the other stops, if you will, along this path in hockey, of course, brings you back into the Ontario Hockey League as an assistant coach with, of all teams, the Mississauga Ice Dogs, before, of course, they became the Niagara Ice Dogs. And that was as an expansion team, which is never easy. And it was a bumpy road.
You think?
I think.
You think? I wonder why it was bumpy. Yeah. So there's somebody in charge there that was kind of, that was interesting. I was brought in. Peter Sturgeon was a former player for Don Cherry. So if people recall, when Mississauga came in, Don Cherry was the figurehead. There was, I think 5 or 6 other owners, but Don was basically running the show. So whatever he wanted, that, we kind of went in that direction. So he brought in Peter Sturgeon. I was working with Peter Sturgeon in his hockey program. So he asked me if I wanted to become assistant coach. And I recall at the time I said, no, I'm not really interested in that, because I was doing, his hockey thing. I figured he would move on to the OHL and be the coach there, that I would kind of move in as the figurehead of the hockey program, which I really loved. I loved working with the players and development, on the ice, off the ice. There was a lot there. I was excited about it. But then after a couple of more conversations, and then you want to be assistant GM, I'm like, okay, well then maybe I said, okay, sure, let's go do this kind of thing. Expansion team, boy, there was a lot of things happening that just kind of gave me pause for thought. That okay, maybe it's there's a lot of things here I don't control, which I'm not very comfortable with. We did our best. We changed direction so many times. We're going to be this identity, and well, that's not working. Let's go with this identity. These guys are going to play. No, they're not doing it. These guys are going to play. And when they finally relieved us of our duties, in an expansion team, I think it was only like 22 games or something. After 20 games, I'm like, I didn't even argue. I'm just like, I just packed my stuff and I said, okay, I'm out. Thank you very much. It wasn't the best environment for me at that time. It was difficult working environment, I would say. Yet, having said all that, wouldn't change anything. It was a lot of fun. I mean, there was a lot of great memories out of that time. Things I laugh about now at the time that were kind of stressful, but now I look back, oh, that was, that was pretty cool. I got to hang out with Don Cherry and be a part of something new, a new building, new environment, bringing all that in. And it was exciting, but at the same time, it was a difficult work environment. But honestly, I don't regret it. Certainly wish things had turned out a little bit differently. But it was a great time to be around Mississauga because the excitement of the team, right? Hazel McCallion and people coming in. It was a great time.
I still love what they're doing there. They've got a decent arena to play in. It's just you would know as well as anybody. They just can't capture fans' attention. Do you think the Ontario Hockey League can work in that market in the Greater Toronto area?
It's tough. I think they picked up in Brampton that it's hard. There's so many distractions. There's so much hockey in that area that it's hard to get that dollar out for them to come see the game. I don't know how they do it. I mean, look at the successful models. They're away, right? They're isolated. They've got their own, market to themselves. There's not a lot of competition in those markets. You get into, Mississauga. Well, it was Mississauga, it was Brampton, and it was Oshawa. There's a concentration in here, not only of OHL, but then the OJ and all these other junior loops that try and get the same fan, right? The family to come out. When can you do that? It's tough. It's tough. I think you're better off to kind of be away from the Toronto area, to have your own little thing going up there. Like Sudbury was, that was the place to be, right? When the game was on, that's where the city came alive. That was our team. They identified with the Wolves. Harder to get that in Mississauga and Brampton, as we saw. So, I wish it were different. It's just tougher, and they do everything they can. They throw everything out there and see what sticks. They still haven't hit it. I don't know how you fix it.
So, back to the mindset work and the building confidence, and we see it. I'm personally glad that it's more of a part of the game, an accepted part, a part that we talk about. I'm thinking of a Yogi Berra-ism here, Adam. Baseball's 50% physical, the other 80% is mental. Is that kind of the approach that you take with the work that you do?
I tell you what, these kids today, they have a power skating coach. They have a skills coach, maybe like a shooting coach. They have a gym fitness trainer. They might have a nutritionist and all these other things. All of these physical attributes, if you don't have a strong mindset, all of these go away. So the number one thing to me, maybe I'm prejudiced, biased, okay? The number one thing to me is have the mindset. If you have the mindset, the rest will come. If you don't have the mindset, you'll never develop into the player that you want to be. So since I've returned, I was in Florida from 2018 to 2022. And I worked with mindset down there as well. My clientele down there were junior age, 16 to 20. I come back to Canada. I'm in the Kitchener area now. My clientele has gotten younger and younger and younger and younger, which tells me the kids are under a lot more pressure at a lot younger age. And as hard as we as adults want to admit it, we put these pressures on these kids at a much younger age. The expectations are there. So they feel it. And some of them are not capable of handling it yet. They haven't had enough life experience to say, this is temporary, I'll get through it. Or, I don't like this coaching, but I like this coaching. This is how I work with it. They don't have that. These are younger kids that are struggling mentally on top of everything else in the world that gives them, anxiety, social media and school and everything else. Now the hockey world has got them under a bubble, and they're having a difficult time handling it. So it's an eye opener for me to see this coming back. I should have known this, right? And we know Canada is the hotbed of hockey. I wish it were different. I wish I didn't have to talk to these kids until they were 15, 16 or later. However, now I'm dealing with 9 and 10-year-olds having these issues, and I hope that I can give them the tools they need to move around these obstacles, to always see the path through, that everything is temporary, that whatever they're dealing with, they can handle it, because they all have skill. I mean, these kids are fantastic hockey players, much better than they were in our day, right? My day was dump and chase, clutch and grab. I mean, that's how I made a living, right? I didn't have the skills that these guys had. Man, they can play, but again, they've got all these coaches. They're missing the mindset coach. And when the mind goes, the skills crumble. And so they can't perform. I'm there to kind of help them, guide them, give them the tools to let them know that they do have the power to get through it. And let me show you how.
I can't help but wonder, I'm sure there are so many factors, but if there's not a lesson in here for us as parents when it comes to helping these kids through the game. I'm sure it starts with a love of being on the ice and playing the game, but I think sometimes, and I see it sometimes too in rinks, that the parents might be a little bit overbearing, thinking, oh, the next Connor McDavid is right here, right now.
Right. Yeah, they're just adding to it, right? They're just adding to it. When I played, my dad sat in the corner. He never sat with the rest of the parents. Okay. He separated himself. He went and sat in the corner. At the end of the game, I'd come walking out. How'd you play? Did you have fun? Yeah. Okay, let's go. And that was it. There was no coaching. There was no, let's watch some video and see how you did. It was, did you have fun? Yeah. Okay, then let's go home. Right? Throw the bag in the car, and that was it. That was the only discussion we ever had. Now, he was a hockey guy. He was a hockey coach. But when it came to me, it was, did you have fun? Yep. Okay, that's all I need to know. As long as you're having fun, you'll keep going, you'll keep playing. He wasn't going to add more pressure than I was already under. If anything, it was his job to take the pressure off. So it wasn't a 24-hour, feed of, hockey's everything. And, let's watch your videos. I see all the cameras there. They got them up on the glass. They're like, what are they doing? Like, they go home and this is how they're spending their family time, is watching little Johnny play his game. And then, oh, there's a mistake there, Johnny. Don't do that again or something. Let the coaches coach, right? The coaches are, the benches are filled with guys that want, either volunteer to do it, God love them, right? Or they're trained to coach. Let the coaches do it. I watch my son play. I don't say a word. I stand there. It's his game. It's his coaches. It's, he needs to handle these situations. I'm not going to add more pressure to it. Did you have fun? Yep. Great. Okay, let's go. And the last thing I say to him before he ever goes on the ice is, go have fun. It's just a game. Go enjoy yourself. I'll see you after. Like, that's as much involvement as I get into it. Even though I'm a former NHL guy, I might know a thing or two about the game. It's not my role to put that on my son. He has coaches. If he asks me, I'll give him my opinion. It's not mine to assert. And so I don't add anything to it. So yeah, when I'm at the game, I'm watching the parents, and I'm seeing a lot of stuff going on that shouldn't be happening, because it would never happen in any other environment. You would never be in the school auditorium. Little Johnny's up on stage, and the parents are like, yeah, they rock. No. They know a quorum, but yet somehow in the arenas, all that goes away. They just kind of lose their mind. Referees, you're yelling at referees, they're yelling at the coaches. This isn't happening. And they're pointing all this other stuff. And I'm just like, hey, guys, just a game, right? We're all going to go home. Sun's going to come up tomorrow. We love our kids. Let's just show them, right? So yeah, I see a lot of stuff happening that I'm not a big fan of. Unfortunately, I can't do anything about it. The only thing that I can do is help the kid get through that, right? Be aware of what's happening.
So I'm thinking back on you as a young hockey player. You go number 2 overall to the Ontario Hockey League, 6 overall to the National Hockey League. Clearly, you're a talent, which even without any outside noise has got to be pressure filled for you as a player.
Mhm.
What would you today say to your 16, 17-year-old self?
Right. Oh boy. That's a good one. Enjoy it because it's going to be short. And now
Yeah.
that I know how long it lasted.
Hindsight, yeah, no kidding.
Hindsight, enjoy the ride. Yeah, have a little lighten up. What would I say? Yeah, that's hard. What I learned is that everything is temporary. You know, whatever you're dealing with today, whatever the stresses you think you have, they probably won't be there tomorrow. They probably won't be there next week. You know, for sure they won't be there next year. You know, if you're dealing with a tough coach, that's temporary. If you're dealing with teammates you don't necessarily get along with, well, those guys are temporary. If you know what you want, you're always going to see the root through the trees. You're always going to see the path. If you're focused on all of these other things, yeah, that's going to really put a cramp in your style. Like you're going to hate the game because of all of these things that are going around. So what I would say, everything is temporary. Just keep your head down and keep going after what you want. You'll find the route to get there.
Okay, this has been much too temporary for me. I can't believe how fast it's gone by, and I promise to let you go because your son's got a game. Before I do, I'm going out on a bit of a limb with this one, but I have to ask it because, gosh, if it's true, it's awesome. Adam Bennett's not the least uncommon name, or the least.
Really?
Yeah, it's not Adam Bennett. Like, you know, there could be other Adam Bennetts, but are you the Adam Bennett from the Grand River Band, Adam Bennett?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. And okay, a couple things. There's a LinkedIn group called Adam Bennett. It's just a bunch of Adam Bennetts on LinkedIn. So one guy organized it, Adam Bennett, and he just puts out requests to all the Adam Bennett. So I'm in an Adam Bennett group on LinkedIn.
That's
and
awesome.
Yes, I was and still today, we just had a jam about a month ago. Love the guys, the Grand River Band. Go to grandriverband.ca. I think I forget the website or something, but yeah, that one thing I did, to kind of occupy my time was play the guitar and sing. And I got to become a rock star with the Grand River Band and enjoyed that. Now that I'm back, I'm hoping to get with those guys a little bit more and keep playing it. I love it. It keeps balance in your life, right? You got to have outside activities. You can't be so, engulfed in one thing that you don't have life experiences. And the Grand River Band was one of them that I had that I absolutely love. I love being a rock star. You're going to see me up on stage again someday.
I can't wait. That is so fantastic because my buddies and I used to jam a little bit. I'm pretty terrible, but I told them when we got together and started jamming more regularly, I said, listen, guys, I'm only doing this for one reason and one reason only. We're going to play a gig some night. I don't care if it's in front of 10 people.
Right.
Or 10,000, but we're going to play a gig. We never did, Adam. I'm a failure as a musician.
You got to do it. Well, see, set the goal.
Okay.
Here's one thing I did to get outside of my comfort zone, because when I'm with the guys and we got the instruments and the sound system going, that's one thing. Okay, when I'm part of a group, I said I'm going to play a coffee shop, just me and a guitar with acoustic guitar, and I recruited my younger daughter to join me. So the two of us in a coffee shop downtown Georgetown, we just said, I'm doing it. I'm getting outside of my comfort zone. Went in and did it, and it was a great experience. But you got to talk to John Stoss. The Stoss brothers. Remember John and Jason?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, get him on the show.
Okay,
look him up. He's a hell of a guitar player and singer. He's got like records out and stuff like that. Like good old country stuff. Get him on your show to get those discussions going, because I love hearing him play his things.
All right,
he does originals.
You came by way of recommendation. John Stoss is coming by your recommendation.
Get the Stoss boys on there and get the music going. I'll be listening for sure.
Adam, this has been so much fun. Thank you very much for the time.
My pleasure. Hey, thank you. Anytime you want me back on, I'd love to talk stories with you. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.